There you go.
Had to find the unmute button. Good morning, everyone. Claudia was scheduled to be our practitioner of the day, but she's having router problems, whatever that means. But this was her selection, and I'd appreciate it if you would center and still yourself and listen to these words from Ernest Holmes. I didn't change the gender, and if you can allow that to be just the way it was written and see past it, I think there's quite a bit here. So this is from Science of Mind, Chapter 1, The Thing Itself. Individuality must be spontaneous. It can never be automatic. The seed of freedom must be planted in the innermost being of man, but like the prodigal son, man must make the great discovery for himself. The divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every living soul.
I see God in everything, in rays of sunlight and pouring rain, in laughter, joy through sorrow and pain. I see God in everything.
And so this morning after the Independence Day celebrations that all of us probably experienced in our neighborhoods, with the bangs and the booms that were somewhat reminiscent of war, we find ourselves at a time of transition that's deep and sometimes painful, but liberating. And so I speak my word this morning that we each individually bring forward in our minds the blessings that freedom has given us, and an equal awareness of the fact that not everyone has experienced those freedoms in the world or in our country. And I invite each and every one of us to call forth the willingness within us, when we're connected to spirit, to know that each and every soul on earth can have their freedom without robbing anyone else, without anyone else being shorted or deprived. And so we can wish and know and intend for freedom to be the norm, for freedom in all areas of life to be extended, to be accepted, and to be experienced by each and every soul that lives and walks this earth. And in that freedom for everyone is even more freedom for each individual. And knowing this to be true, we call it good and very good. And we raise our sights to this new day when each and every person shall experience true and sanctioned and sacred freedom. And so it is.
I see God every time I turn to help someone else. I'm the one who learns that God's in everything I see. God's in you, and God's in me.
Thank you, Pamela and Jackson. So this morning's message is Let Freedom Ring. And that's the title that I got from our global 2020 planning. And yet I am going a little bit, I'm still going to talk about our country, etc., but I'm going a little bit differently today. So I'm not going to be using the PowerPoint that much. I have two things on PowerPoint that I'm going to be using. But the rest of it, I'm going to share with you something that I got from an organization called Dream Corps that I belong to, that is about visioning freedom for our world and our country. But first of all, Dr. Holmes says the divine plan is one of freedom. The inherent nature of humanity. Whoops! How do I get back now? Uh-oh. I don't know how to get back. Yipes. Oh, well. I guess I'm not going to read you that quote. I hope you read it when it was up there, because I don't know how to get back.
What about the previous button that was an option?
I tried that, but it doesn't.
Previous doesn't work? Okay.
No. So anyway, so we're just going to start out here. So our histories help us remember that America has always been two things. From the beginning, we've always had this beautiful founding dream of liberty and justice for all. But there was also an ugly founding reality. And so I'm going to stop this share for a moment. And if you want to just see me, you have to click on the upper right, and then you'll just see the person that's speaking. So here we are in the middle of a pandemic. A few weeks ago, there was one of the biggest Juneteenth celebrations in history. We're undergoing waves of protests and experiencing what I believe is a great awakening right now, and that it's causing rapid positive changes and radically reshifting racial ideas in America. All of this has been producing mixed emotions and questions about what our country really is. What is America? Where should it be? What can it be? And where do each of us fit in? So our history, like I just said, has always been about two things: this beautiful divine ideal and then its reality. So on the Dream Corps website, they write this: the Declaration of Independence changed the world with its bold call for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that very same document meant nothing for the millions of people held as slaves. Its text included an ugly shot at merciless Indian savages. In the years to come, women and anyone who was not a white propertied male would be left out of government by and for the people. It took a bloody war to end slavery, only for Jim Crow to replace it. It took more spilled blood to end Jim Crow, only for an era of mass incarceration and militarized policing in Black and brown communities to replace that. Only through marches and protests, sermons and sit-ins did women gain the right to vote and LGBTQ Americans gain a measure of equality. This is what America has really been about. Every generation has had the responsibility to move America a little bit further from that founding reality and closer to our beautiful founding dream. Every generation is called to refound America. And this is where we are right now. We're in a place where we've been sent to our rooms for everything we've been doing. All the stuff that needed to be healed is being revealed. And we have the opportunity to create something that's more powerful, that's more beautiful, that is more towards our vision of liberty and justice for all and the pursuit of happiness. And so we were I want to look at this morning a few of the new founders that we should be celebrating this weekend. So the first one, of course, is the Black Lives Matter movement and criminal justice reformers. You know, when Alicia Garza first used the hashtag Black Lives Matter, no one could have predicted what would happen. America will forever be different because of a movement led by the Black women that took to the streets and declared, "I can't breathe." People directly impacted by our broken criminal justice system spoke out and built a left-right coalition. Their voices led to federal bipartisan criminal justice reform legislation that has brought thousands of people home from behind bars. Today, we're in the midst of a national bipartisan conversation about not just body cams and chokeholds, but the scope and purpose of policing and incarceration. It's an interesting thing when you look at these, the idea of policing. When I was in England, I realized none of them carry guns. They all have a billy club, but none of them carry guns. And I think I read an article just recently that in the last 9 years, the police in England have killed 2 people. And I thought, wow, what are they doing that we're not? So this criminal justice reform is happening, as well as our Black Lives Matter movement. My second idea was the Dreamers. The Supreme Court just blocked the current administration's effort to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. That's DACA, as I'm sure you know. Handing a victory to another set of new founders, the Dreamers. Named after the Dream Act that would have granted them citizenship, these young people, brought here as children, not knowing any other home, have reshaped the conversation around immigration. Just as importantly, they have reclaimed the very idea of the American dream from a narrow vision of white picket fences and a car in every driveway. The real American dream, given voice by the Dreamers, is of a multiracial, multi-ethnic rainbow republic where everyone can strive for their dreams. So these groups that I'm talking about are the people that are changing our current reality. And it's taken a while. It's not just an overnight thing. The next one is the LGBTQ community. So I can't talk about the Supreme Court without mentioning a victory for the LGBTQ Americans that just happened recently and happened during Pride Month, which was wonderful. Because in a 5-4 decision, the court ruled the people cannot be discriminated against in the workplace due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. The progress since 2004, much less since the Stonewall Uprising, sparked the modern LGBTQ movement. And it's enough to give us all hope for all manner of change. So even though we have been sheltered in place, most of the world has been sheltered in place, there are things happening that are moving us into a new reality. The next one is essential workers. Essential workers, that phrase, essential workers, is up there with the idea of flatten the curve. This phrase refers to those workers from healthcare to delivery drivers who must keep working instead of being quarantined. And as the spotlight landed on them, we began to realize that most of these essential workers are treated like they're expendable. And suddenly our new heroes are the disproportionately Black and brown workers who are the backbone of our economy. These heroes will force us to rethink what the economy of tomorrow looks like. What just flashed through my mind, which is, I'm going to have to say it anyway, not only have we looked at the essential workers in our lives, but what really blew me away, and not in a good way, was the news the other day, last week, that Trump and his companies had just brought in 15,000 workers from other countries to, and you know why they do that? It's because they're cheaper. They don't have to pay them as much. I remember in Hawaii when the new hotels were built on the Waimea side, everybody was so excited because there's not very many jobs in Hawaii. The only jobs are in the service industries. And so the people that were living there were all ready to go to these hotels and be able to start working. And there was lots of interviews and, you know, job interviews, etc. But they too ended up bringing over people from out of our country because they wouldn't have to pay so much. It makes me realize that part of my own white privilege, so to speak, is not really noticing the people that are the essential workers. Maybe I notice them in the hospital when I go to visit somebody, etc., which I haven't been able to do in a while. But, you know, a lot of times I just don't really, I haven't in the past really noticed the people that are cleaning the bathrooms or doing the jobs that we don't want to do. So we've got the Black Lives Matter people and criminal justice reformers. We have the dreamers. We have the LGBTQ community. Too many letters there. And I know I'm missing some because there's some that's been added since I wrote this. So essential workers. And my last one is our youth. The largest and most diverse generations in our country right now is our youth. And they're already leaving their mark in our history. They're the ones that are fueling the wave of protests that are happening right now. And they didn't stop there. Young people, both progressives and increasingly young conservatives, are leading the charge to confront the climate crisis before it's too late. They are imagining, innovating, and inventing the high-tech future we will all live in. They are making the government toe the line. I love watching Katie Porter on the news, Senator. She is like a school teacher who breaks everything down so that I can understand it. And so, and it's just amazing to watch her because she questions, she has the best questions. And she's one of those youth, so to speak. So here's 5 groups of people that are changing our reality. And what I realized the other day when I was thinking about this is I can either really wish that I could, life would return to normal. Or I can look at the fact that right now we have the opportunity to create a new normal. And this new normal is what is being created by these groups of people. This new normal is going to be a wonderful, wonderful experience, I think, for all of us. You know, when I was living in Canada, one of the wonderful things that I appreciated, there was a couple things I appreciated actually. One was the diversity in absolutely everything. I mean, no matter where you were, there were people of all different colors living in Canada and in their government and everywhere. And one of the great things that I loved about their government was the prime minister of whatever province it was would declare that it was time for another election, and you had 90 days. The people had 90 days only to do their politicking and try to get people to work with them and convince them to vote for them, etc. 90 days. Do you know what happens in our government? From the moment they get elected, they start campaigning for their next election. And it makes me think, well, when do they do work? When do they really do work? And in fact, our government has done relatively little work in quite a while. Even while President Obama, he managed to get a lot of things done, but there was a lot of things that were prevented from being done. So allowing ourselves to realize that we're moving into the founding dream of this country, where everyone is equal, all people are equal, that everyone is given the inalienable rights to be happy, to have a job, to experience life without servitude. So this means that we have to be willing, as we move into this new vision, to work with people, to let go of our old ideas, and actually accept that people think differently than we do. And to honor the people who are struggling to refound America in every generation. Now, one of the things that we know is that in God, in unity, there's only the one anyway. There's only one life. That life is God's life. And that life is our life. And I think that this is the time for us to really allow that to be our truth. If each one of us believed in that, if each one of us let go of our attachments to the titillation of the media, if we let go of all of these old things that have happened up until now and got it, that we're the ones, we're supposed to be here during this time to move forward in a new way, in a way that is filled with love, in a way that is filled with peace, in a way that is filled with joy. And of course, we have to do it in our own lives first in order to see it outside of ourselves. So in a way, this sheltering in place has given us the opportunity to really look and see, where am I not believing? Because the bottom line law here is what Jesus said, it's done unto you as you believe. Do you really believe that everyone is equal? Do we really believe that everyone has the right to experience life in a holistic, wonderful way? Are we believing that we've already crossed the midnight hour in the environmental situation? What are we believing? We need to constantly examine those beliefs all the time. I want to share with you one more slide here. We'll go back to this one. Come on, move. So here's the ones that we celebrated that I just mentioned. The Black Lives Matters movement and the criminal justice reformers, that's one. The dreamers, the LGBT community, TQ community, the essential workers, and our youth. And of course, we should be celebrating ourselves. We're all connected. Freedoms, rights, and responsibilities are built on the premise that we are all interconnected spiritual beings having our uniquely personal human experience, and that together we are all on a common journey, a journey that takes place both in our consciousness as well as in the physical world. So what is your new world? What does it look like? What are the benefits of it? What are the joys of it? This is something that I'm going to ask you, that I'm asking you to really contemplate this week as we get closer and closer to the time when we can all be together physically again. How are we personally allowing ourselves to make this journey in a more conscious way? This is what I know about every single one of us, that we are already all that we want to be. There is that within us, that infinite presence within us that is celebrating our life. It's celebrating the lives of all the people that have come before us, and it's celebrating those people as the reason why we can emerge from this moment into something even greater. Each one of us is uniquely, individually, however you want to call it, an embodiment of the divine. And it's time for us to start acting it fully. This is where our freedom comes from. And I know that we can do it together as well as individually. So let's say this affirmation together. I know and live in divine freedom, and every day I take action to share that freedom with the world. Instead of my doing a spiritual mind treatment to close this talk with, I'm going to share with you a prayer that was written by Reverend Kathleen McKern-Verrigan. Some of you might remember her. She's my friend that I took a bunch of women to Ireland with, and she spoke for us a couple of years ago, and she also brought that big labyrinth and laid it out in our sanctuary, and we got to walk it. And she did this based on the Ho'oponopono experience as taught by Dr. Lynn. So just close your eyes for a minute and listen to these words. To my beloved United States of America and all her people, I'm sorry for the First Nation peoples that my ancestors helped capture and slaughter in the name of freedom. I'm sorry for the pilgrims who sought religious expression while claiming that their religion was the only way. I'm sorry for the women and children and people of color who have suffered under the power-hungry grip of the patriarchy. To my beloved United States of America and all her people, please forgive me for ignoring the plight of people who are hungry, homeless, ill, and defeated. Please forgive me for professing religious freedom, yet judging others as wrong or misguided. Please forgive me for seeing others as separate but not equal, and for believing in the illusion of separation. To my beloved United States of America and all her people, thank you for being a sanctuary that I can stand beside with respect and dignity for all. Thank you for showing me every day we are the people and that we are indivisible. Thank you for being one nation under our understanding of God with liberty and justice for all. To my beloved United States of America and all her people, I love you and your many landscapes, valleys, mountains, prairies, rivers, and lakes. I love you and your people, equally created under one Creator. I love you for embracing your people who are yearning to be free. To my beloved United States of America and all her people, happy birthday. Thank you. I love you. And so it is.